1973 Soviet Chess Championship, where we saw pawn to d4 by none other than Boris Spassky, former world champion. And this move was answered by knight to f6 by the magician from Riga, former world chess champion Mikhail Tal. Today we will enjoy a spectacular, exciting and tingly chess game. We will enjoy some relaxation and we will enjoy some damn good coffee. In 1973, Boris Spassky, the chess legend, played pawn to c4. And today we are going to see an amazing clash of styles. The universal immaculate gentleman and chess player Boris Spassky against the magician, the perceived madman who plays unsound but brilliant moves. Or is that a myth? Could the magician in secret be a scientist whose accuracy on the chessboard is so beyond our understanding as mere mortals that it seems like magic? After c4, Tal played pawn to e6. So now we have an opening, Nimzo-Indian defense. Knight to c3, and we see the point of Tal's play, the bishop coming out. The only perfect move, bishop to b4. You can see the red ones, they are blunders, the blue ones are only okay. There's only one good place to put the bishop, and that is on b4. And thanks to this wonderful Chess Up 2 board, we can have this assistance going on while we analyze the game. So, with this move, this knight is now pinned and cannot move at all, cannot move, meaning that this knight may have an idea of coming into this square right here and attacking the c3 knight. Understanding this, we can understand that the next move from Spassky, he puts his bishop, a green move, on g5, pinning the knight to the king, so you can now see that all knight moves are red, they are all mistakes. Why? Because if the knight were to move, like here, then bishop can come in with a green move and capture the queen. So that is the point. Now let me tell you a little bit about the backstory of this tournament. The 1973 Soviet Championship. Some have argued that it was more difficult to win the Soviet Championship than to win the World Championship. Why could that be? Who was playing in this tournament? Well, we had two former world champions playing right now. Spassky, who just lost his title to Fischer the year before, and Mikhail Tal, who defeated Botvinnik in the 60s. Then we also had on some of the other boards former world champion Petrosian, former world champion Smyslov, future world champion Karpov, two-time contender for world champion Viktor Korchnoi, and then we had F.M. Geller, Paul Keres, Lev Polgayevsky, and Taimanov, who had all qualified for the candidates tournament on at least 2 occasions. Besides Bobby Fischer and maybe Bent Larsen, these were all the best players in the world. And they were not just playing to win. In a sense, they were playing for their lives as chess players. Tal cannot really allow this bishop to just be here. He needs a little bit of information from the bishop. So he plays pawn to h6, a green move. And this is an inquisitive move. It's just asking the bishop, what do you want to do? Are you going to actually capture the knight, or are you going to be on this diagonal here? And you can see you could capture the knight, a little bit of information there for Tal, or you could move it back to h4, and that is the move chosen by Spassky. So the pin is maintained, but the magician / secret scientist has a little bit of extra information going on, and he's going to use that information to strike in the center. We see these center pawns here by white controlling all these squares here. That's too much. Tal is an attacking player, and he really gives it his all in this game. So he plays pawn, a green move again. We are going to see a lot of those in this game. Perfect move. Pawn to c5, challenging the center. But let me clarify something just a little bit. What did I mean when I said that these players, all of the players in fact in the tournament, were playing for their chess lives? Their very future as Soviet chess players and all of the very significant favors imparted therein depended on their performance in the championship. Why? For decades at this point, the Soviet Union had dominated world chess, and they would have always had a Soviet citizen on the throne as world chess champion. This was a strategic propaganda ploy for the Soviets. They were saying, oh, our system is better than the capitalist system, and therefore we produce the smartest people, and therefore we win in chess. Of course, we know that you can be very good at chess and not be very smart, and you can be very smart and not be very good at chess. But propaganda doesn't care about accuracy or truth. And what had happened the year before this game and this tournament? The dreaded American Bobby Fischer had taken the World Championship title from the Soviets, from Boris Spassky playing with the white pieces. And now the KGB had gone on a little round, tapping all the players on the shoulder, saying, hey, comrade, do you like the free car we give you? Do you like the free restaurants that you can go to? Do you like the free apartment? Well, you're going to have to prove now that you deserve it, because if you fail to perform, we're going to take it away from you, because we only want the best, because we have to establish Soviet dominance in chess again. So with some KGB agents lurking in the background, the pressure was on for this game. Now let's take a look at how Spassky reacted to this challenge in the center. He could capture the pawn. Maybe that's not so good. He could defend the pawn. Let's take a look. We could push this pawn one square. Or we could advance the pawn. That is also an option. And that is what he chose. He advanced the pawn, saying, okay, you struck at my center, but I will maintain my center. the magician / scientist is not done yet. So he is saying, I will undermine your center no matter the cost. And therefore he strikes again with another flank pawn. And you can see that the board says that this is a red move. How can that be? Well, that is simply because the board is set to only think for a couple of seconds before it evaluates the move. And a modern chess computer can do a couple billion calculations in a couple of seconds. But sometimes with a player like Tal, that's not enough. So if you put this on a big machine like my editing PC and let it run for a while, it says, no, in fact, pawn to b5 is the best move. Should we capture that pawn? Well, it says it's blue. Is it the best move? No. If we capture the pawn, let's imagine that. And then let's actually try to practice our intuition a little bit. Let's practice our visualization skills. So look at the board and try to imagine the pieces moving. So white won a pawn here. But how about if black plays this pawn up one square? Now we are threatening to capture the pawn back. And if white captures our pawn, well, then we can play bishop takes, and we would have this bishop slicing down on this diagonal, capturing this bishop as soon as this pawn moves, and the white center will have been completely destabilized. So that is why we do not see that. Instead, white, Spassky here, inserts this little move. He captures this pawn, green move. And of course, Tal does not want to capture with this pawn because that would allow the exchange of queens, and he wants his queen for a devastating attack, even playing with black. So he captures with this pawn. This is by far the most aggressive option. I'll put this over here so we can see the material count. Now, with the f-pawn capturing, after castles, the rook will be on the open file, and we have now 2 pawns in the center, meaning that at some point we can play d5. And after this has been inserted, now Spassky is ready to play pawn takes pawn, because there is a difference now. Tal played pawn to d5, saying, oh, I'm not even going to play a6. I can play that at any moment. No, you want a pawn. That's fine. That's fine. Because it's not about the pieces that leave the board. It's about the pieces that stay on the board. And look at these pawns. So he wanted to challenge the center of Spassky. He did. It is gone. 0 pawns in the center for white. But look at these guys. Very, very powerful. So a move such as this pawn advancing is now threatened. Threatening this knight. The knight can't move, because if we try, look, the board signals that that would be check to the king. So we are actually, as white, threatening to just come. We are actually, as black, threatening to just advance this and win the knight. So Spassky pushes the pawn to e3 to defend this square with the pawn and with the queen. And before we continue, it's just a very small bit of housekeeping. This board is amazing. If you like it, you can buy it with a 10% discount, because you can buy it with a 10% discount. There is a link and a promo code in the description. So that is if you want the board. Now, we didn't see pawn getting pushed. We could play that as black, but let's castle first. That's also a green and perfect move. Let's castle first. Tal always liked to castle his king, often quite early in the game. Why? Well, because he was a very aggressive attacking player. And with the king castled, it is harder to attack the king. How is that aggressive? It's aggressive in this way. If you don't have to worry too much about an attack against your king, you don't have to make too many defensive moves later. And that gives you time to play what? Aggressive moves. That is correct. Let's have a sip of damn good coffee. Now, knight f3, furthering influence in the center on the dark squares, and queen coming to a5, another green move. So with this move, a lot of things, well, are happening really. Of course, we look at the hand. The hand moves the queen here, okay? What does that do? Well, it creates a battery with the queen and bishop against the pinned knight. If it were black to move again, bishop takes knight, pawn takes knight, queen takes pawn. That is check. And either the king moves, and we have just won a pawn, and the white king is very bad. If we block with the queen, then queen takes rook in the corner. So that's what we get for looking at the hand. But what about the space left behind? How about the d8 square? On d8, the queen was pinned to the knight by the bishop. Now, having moved in this aggressive fashion, this knight is actually free to move and could, for instance, come here to further put pressure on this knight. And that explains white's decision. The universal gentleman and immaculate chess player Boris Spassky, of course, realized this threat and quite simply played bishop takes knight. How would you recapture? What would you play? Would you want to insert this little move that's red to try to go for the advantage and then later capture the bishop? Well, what's the problem? Can you see? We could capture that bishop. So we would win the knight and the bishop for only a knight. And that is why we simply see rook takes bishop. Now this rook is even more aggressive, pointing towards the white king side. We need to defend this knight as white. So what does Spassky do? A classy move. He plays queen to d2. The board suggests it's only blue and not green. Maybe a bit of an inaccuracy. Maybe. So what does white want to do in this position? White wants to get the bishop out, get castled, and say, hey, you only have one pawn, I captured 2 pawns, and with the king out of the way, I'm not afraid of your big center. Oh, scary center. No, not afraid of that. And Tal says, okay, do you know what? How about I play pawn to a6, a green move again. Just say you can have this pawn as well. And Spassky obliges, says, well, it's a good move. I'll capture one. Now I'm ahead 2 pawns in the material count. And Tal reaches for his knight. And does he play the blue move and capture the pawn? No. He plays the green move. He says, you know, you can have all the pawns you want. You can have all the pawns you want. You put this knight out to look at these dark squares. I put a knight out to counteract that. My big center is coming, and it's coming for you. Spassky says, okay, we play bishop e2. perfect move. Plan is very clear. I want to castle out of the attack and use my 2-pawn advantage to win. But here we see some absolutely astonishing calculation by the magician from Riga. One of those moves that just defies logic. Except the more you check it, it just works. It just works. And to add to the genius of the move we're going to see, it is the only move to get an advantage as black in this position. If you don't play this move, if Tal had not found this move, all of his effort would have been in vain, and all the sacrifices he made of the pawns would have given him no advantage whatsoever. So what is the move? We take our foot, we take the gas pedal, and we push it all the way down. Pawn to d4, and here we go. This pawn must be taken, because otherwise this knight is just dead. Just come and capture the knight. So we capture the knight, capture the pawn rather, sorry. Pawn takes pawn. And what is the point? How are we following this up? Well, are we capturing this pawn? We have the knight, we have the pawn, we could capture. But unfortunately, it's defended twice by both the knight and the queen. And if the queen recaptures after, say, knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes, the queen would also still be defending the knight. Can you see how that works? So what would Tal do? How is he justifying this? Let's sacrifice more stuff. It's Mikhail Tal, the magician. Rook takes f3, takes the knight. That is the sacrifice of what we call the exchange, since the rook is considered to be worth 5 pawns and the knight only 3. And to add to the madness, when we recapture with the bishop, which Spassky did, notice what this bishop is doing. It is attacking this undefended knight, and it is also attacking the rook, so the undefended knight is pinned to the rook. So what did we do? Did we play bishop here to defend? Well, no, because this pawn can capture it. Did we play bishop here to defend? No. Pawn takes pawn. Just saying, you can have the knight. I actually just put it there so you could have it. So let's imagine, see, it's a red move, let's imagine that Spassky had not been a world champion, had not been one of the greatest chess players of all time, and had just captured this. Well, pawn, can you see, takes knight, and if pawn takes pawn, bishop takes pawn, and oops, the queen is pinned to the king, can't get away, and he would lose his queen. So he did not play that. Instead, he played this little move. Castles. Green move. Perfect. Perfect. Saying, okay, you got your big center, but I got a bunch of pawns. You got an attack, but I got my king out of the way. And Tal said, did you forget about one thing? How about pawn takes knight? You forgot about the knight. Now I won a knight. And let's do a quick material count because it's very unbalanced. We have 2 knights and a bishop, 3, 3, 3 points, 9, 11, 9, 10, and 11 with the pawns here. And we have the rook worth 5, knight is 3, that's 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So even after all of this, black is still down the equivalent of 1 pawn. And his knight is attacked. And the knight can't move, because the rook is also attacked by this monster bishop. But he has to do something about the attack on his queen first. So what does he do? He plays pawn takes pawn. Now his queen is no longer attacked. How would you react in this situation? How about just bishop takes pawn to keep the pressure on the queen? And here we have to sort of celebrate the genius of these two players, because when Tal played this move, starting all of this, he had to calculate all of this, had to get to this position, see that he'd attack the queen, attack the rook, winning an exchange, and he had to think, okay, why would Spassky ever go for that? What kind of very strong move could he have in that position? Where can he put the queen so I can't take the rook? And he had to see Spassky's brilliant queen to d6 counter-attacking idea, putting a ton of pressure on the knight. Had to see all of that and find this move. Not capturing the rook, because that would give no advantage at all. Leaving the rook and playing rook takes a6. Now I'm okay with recapturing this pawn, but it's not really about the pawn. It's about the rook getting out of the defense, out of the attack, getting out of the attack from the bishop and defending the knight. And Spassky is saying, okay, material is equal except that you did defend the knight but only once, and with my queen move here it's attacked twice, so bishop takes knight. And you can get the rook, but the rook is worth 5 and the knight is worth 3, and I will get your bishop back, so I will get a knight and a bishop for my rook, so I will be up again. Tal also had to calculate that, and here he still needed a reply in order to get the advantage going, and calculating all of this at the board in 1973. No computers, nothing, just two men at a chessboard. He had found this move. Not capturing the rook, saying no, you can have the material. It's not about the pieces that leave the board. Bishop coming to the perfect square b5 with an attack on the queen. It's not about the pieces that leave the board. It's about the pieces that stay on the board. And the queen is attacked. And where is that queen supposed to go? Let's give it a little, let's touch it here. Can't go here, because that's attacked by the queen. Can't capture the bishop, it's defended by the queen. Cannot go here, defended by the queen. Cannot go here, here, here. All attacked by pawn, queen, everything. Only one move to save the queen, which is here. And what is the problem with that move? It is rook can now capture the bishop. Is that finally the end of the mayhem between these two giants of the chessboard? No, of course not. Because this queen is now extremely aggressive. And Tal is actually, for just a brief moment in time, equal on material, but the queen attacks the bishop. The bishop can't move because it's pinned to the king. And Spassky jumps all over that with rook to c1, saying that if you come and capture my rook, I will recapture with my own rook, and there's no way for you to defend your bishop, because this is a dark squared bishop can never defend her sister, and this is losing for black. So we saw a different move. Did we move the rook? No, because if you move the rook, we are no longer defending the bishop. So Tal said, oh, some people think it's hard to calculate when they are in one pin. I think one pin, that's not enough. I'll put myself in a second pin with another perfect move, bishop to c5, breaking the pin. So rook takes rook is no longer possible, and if rook takes bishop, queen takes bishop, black is winning. So that's chess. We are playing chess. But of course they were also playing for rather larger stakes than I have ever played chess for. Thank goodness. I'm only here to relax and enjoy the beauty and the tingles and the relaxation that these towering geniuses have provided us with in this piece of art that we are currently looking at. I guess if you're listening here, you also appreciate relaxation, you appreciate chess beauty. If you would like to help me produce more and better videos, I have a Patreon where you can pledge any amount, and to some of the tiers you can get free stuff, free extra videos. You can access to the ASMR Chess Discord chat where we hang out, discuss our games. Sometimes I analyze games of the patrons, and exclusive videos, bunch of good stuff. And you'd be helping me keep the channel going and making content celebrating relaxational aspect of chess and appreciating the beauty of the story of the game. What did Spassky do? What did Spassky do? Well, he had a plan. He's playing rook to c2, another green move. Is this about defending the pawn on a2? Yes. But Spassky was this immaculate, universal player. It's not only one point to a move. That's the kind of move I play. I play moves that has like 1 point, often a wrong point, or half a point. Spassky plays moves with multiple points. Now the pawn is defended. Also, the rook on c2 made way for the rook on f1 to come to c1. What does that do? Well, that means that this bishop would be forever pinned, freezing down the black queen and the black rook to defense of this bishop, and then the white queen could sneak itself in, for instance via e5 with a third attacker. Notice again, this bishop can't ever be defended by her sister. It's simply not possible within the rules of chess, leading to a lost game for black. So what was Tal's plan? What did he do? And I'm wondering what he would do here. If only I had some sort of way to know Tal with the dynamism. Place queen to a4, the green move, perfect move. Attacking the rook, but rook coming to c1. Wasn't that the plan? But that's red now. Why is that red? Well, if we were to play that, so why is this move red? How is this a counter move? That's what Spassky wanted to play anyway. He didn't play this. Why? Well, there's a huge problem. This bishop that was so weak and so attacked and couldn't move, well, suddenly bishop can come and capture on f2. Crucially, that's check. Check to the king. So imagine in your mind's eye, this bishop comes and captures on f2. Either we capture back with the rook. Oops, then this rook is undefended because this bishop has gone and this rook has gone, so rook takes rook with check and a winning game for black. And if bishop takes in f2 and king takes on f2, the bishop will be gone, the king will be here, and with the queen a4 move, the rook and the queen are coordinating on c2, so rook takes c2 check, rook takes rook, and finally queen takes rook with check, also very nicely defending the bishop and having a completely winning game with an extra bishop for only a pawn against a very exposed king. So that is why Spassky did not play rook on f to c1. What did he play? He understood that his aggressive ambitions, with the queen all up in the face of black here, pinning this bishop, was not going to come to fruition. And as this universal player who played objective chess, he has been cited by Magnus Carlsen as an inspiration for the universality and practical nature of his play. Said, okay, I'll abandon that plan and I will play the queen back with a perfect move to b3, offering an exchange of queens, giving me this outside passed pawn and no way for these bishops to coordinate and break the pin, and we will then use the method of doubling up the rooks and winning this bishop. So of course Tal absolutely cannot allow the exchange of queens. First of all, because it's not accurate, it would not win him the game. And maybe if you're a long-term viewer on this channel, you also know it's Tal. Exchange the queens? No. Sacrifice the queen maybe. Exchange it? No. So he played green move, perfect move, queen to f4, coordinating an attack now with the bishop and the queen. They're now looking on f2. It's a lot of the same themes as before. And here we see the slight mistake. Spassky has an almost perfect understanding of the position, but there's one small thing. He takes his queen. That's the correct move. He wants to insist on exchanging the queens. He lifts up his queen. It comes here over e3 and it passes through f3 and lands on g3. So that if queen takes queen, he can capture with his pawn and not have some very bad isolated pawns, because if the queen would have gone here, queen takes queen and pawn takes, and these two pawns would have been very, very weak. But he should not have passed through f3. Going to f3 and accepting these very ugly pawns were the way to fight. Because had the queen been on f3, this next move would not have been possible. The queen goes to f5, maintaining the coordination on f2, and avoids the exchange of queens while also attacking this rook. And had the queen been on f3, Spassky could have exchanged the queens. So he could have countered this move. This move would have not have worked. But on g3 he can't do that. But I think I know what he thought. He thought, well, I got everything I wanted. The king is safe, the queen is protecting. If you want to make a hole into here. You have to exchange the queens. You're obviously not going to do that. Yes, you are attacking my rook, but I want to play rook to c1, and look at that. It's defended, and I got the battery against the bishop. And Tal says, yeah, it's defended for now. Probably I'm going to sacrifice it later. Who knows? I'll just play this nice little perfect bishop to b7. And this little move. And now we see the point of Tal's play. With the bishop back here, this bishop didn't seem that strong, and this bishop certainly didn't seem that strong. And I need games like this to show me the potential, how to transform something that doesn't look active into something that really is active, because this is super active. This bishop looks at g2, just took one move, and now it's lasering down to the castle position of the White Majesty. And this bishop attacks this pawn, the side of the castle, and it's coordinating with the queen. And if we can survive the problems of this pin and this dangerous battery, these are some extremely active pieces. Realizing his mistake, Spassky tries to correct it. He plays the only move in the position, queen to f3, saying, please let me exchange the queens. I need to exchange the queens. And at least now, if you don't, I'll be blocking the attack on f2. Did Tal exchange the queens? No. Did you think so? No. Queen, the perfect move to g5. In some ways, this looks like the typical Tal game, sacrificing a bunch of stuff, refusing to exchange queens, seizing the initiative, doesn't care that white moves first and he's supposed to be defending or going for a draw. No. Gas pedal, foot, all the way down. But there are some things, and I'll talk about that later in the video, that's very remarkable, very remarkable by the game and Tal. And it calls into question if he really was a magician, or maybe he was a scientist, a mad scientist, but a scientist nonetheless. Spassky needs some sort of counterattack going on, and could Spassky now play the queen back to g3, maybe go for the draw? No, because at any moment Tal is just ready to turn this pin on this bishop around in white's face. And if we were to see this, you can see it's red. Why? So it's not repeating the position. Tal is not going to play queen to f5. Tal is going to play bishop takes f2. If queen takes f2, let's sacrifice the queen, shall we? And play queen takes rook on c1, rook takes queen on c1, rook takes rook on c1, check. And remember, the queen is here making the only legal move. Queen to f1, rook takes queen, king takes rook. And what are we left with? A bishop for black and no pieces except some pawns for white. So that would be losing. And of course, if bishop takes f2 and king takes f2, rook takes rook, check, rook takes rook, and queen coming to f5. Remember, the king is here. Practice your visualization skills. And the rook is here. So that's check, interposed by the queen, or maybe the king moves, and the queen takes rook. So also winning for black. So that is why we couldn't see queen to g3. Actually, the queen will now have to vacate, leave her husband, leave the king, and go for a bold counterattack with queen to b3, attacking the bishop. And this game was first showed to me by a very dear friend of mine who said something very cool. He said, my favorite move on in this entire game is not any of these spectacular Tal sacrifices or any of Spassky's ultra-precise universal moves. It's this next move. Because it's so subtle and yet so logical that it's just really beautiful. You have all this stuff going on. Bishop being pinned to the rook. This bishop is attacked. This bishop is coordinating an attack with the queen on g2. That's a potential checkmate threat. The bishop is pinning this pawn to the king and threatening to come in with a sacrifice. This queen is pinning this pawn to the king. If this rook moves, it can come in with a check. There's all this stuff going on. What does Tal play? These are the moves. These are the moves that he's maybe not that celebrated for, but you need them. You can't just sacrifice pieces. Sometimes you have to play a move like rook to c7. And I looked at that and I was like, oh my god. It does everything. It looks like it doesn't do anything at all, but it does everything. The bishop is defended. The rook is no longer blocking the bishop, so now we are threatening checkmate. And Spassky is in a huge, huge pickle now. It's a very big problem now. Because what are you going to play? You have to defend against this checkmate threat, and look at the lasering power of these two bishops against the king. So pawn to g3. You can see that's a red move. I can tell you that the evaluation of the game right now is it's -5. So after this subtle move, the black side is completely winning. Technically, playing pawn to g3 is not the best move. But we can't move this one. How about this one? Also a red move. Red move. Red moves. Red moves. What could we play? Queen coming here to defend. Let's explore that and why Spassky didn't play that. So why is the machine suggesting a queen to h3? And here we have to understand something about how computers think about chess. If you have a lost position, it is saying that the best move is the move that avoids checkmate for the longest. And that is why it's going to say that queen coming to h3 is the best move, despite that move having all of the exact same problems that we just looked at with the queen on g3. We saw how that leads to a necessarily winning game for black. So of course Spassky is not going to try that. He knows exactly how he's going to lose. So instead he's trying to keep the game alive, trying for counter chances. So he plays pawn to g3. And here the dance really begins. Let's see for black side, can we arrange our pieces in such a way that we can force checkmate? This bishop is super duper strong. Can we get it to work with the queen to get access to the king? Well, first of all, let's sacrifice this bishop with the winning move. Nice sacrifice. It is Tal after all. Bishop takes, pawn on f2 with check. Now, if rook takes, you can see that's definitely a red move, because rook takes and then rook takes, rook with check. So that does not work. It's actually getting very close to checkmate. And therefore, we see king takes bishop. We could note that the machine says that you actually survive a little bit longer by not capturing the bishop, but that is even more hopeless. So king takes on f2. And I call this a dance. And the Dark Queen has invited the White Majesty for a dance of death, because she wants to maneuver him into the perfect position to strike the killing blow. So first there is a check to the Majesty. You cannot get back this way because of this very strong bishop. So the king goes here, which is the best move, but it's a matter of technique now for Tal. The dance continues. Only move, by the way. Like, would you mess this up? Would you mess this position up? There is one way to win. You have to be precise. That's like the cruel part of chess, but also the beautiful part of chess. You have played this perfect game. Beautiful ideas, the best you ever played. And at the very, very end, you have one crucial move. And you miss it. Have you tried that? I've tried that. Will Tal mess up? No. So he plays perfect move, queen check. Now, if you block with the rook, which is actually suggested, rook takes rook check, wins easily. So instead, the king goes back to f1. But what is different now? Now this bishop can come in with a check from this diagonal. And now we're going to see a red move from Tal. Not because that this is a mistake. So he plays bishop to a6 with a check. Why is that a red move? Well, it's because the board, the computer, and the programming says that is not the fastest way to checkmate. But it is not a blunder in the same way as not giving the correct check with the queen earlier. This is still completely winning, and if he plays precisely, he is absolutely going to win this game. This is a mistake in the sense that he could technically have won 2 to 3 moves faster. But he's going to use his computational power, all his brain power, to find the very most accurate moves in the position where it is absolutely needed. As long as he can keep winning and getting closer to the goal and be sure that that's what he's doing, he's okay not getting the absolute perfect move. So what will the king do? The king has to move, and it has to move to a dark square, and it goes to g1 to not be exposed to checks on the f1 diagonal. But queen, and now again we have one of those where it's actually crucial. Queen coming to d4 with a check again. You can't interpose the rook because rook takes rook check. You can't interpose the queen because queen takes queen, and that means that the only move is to go on the light square with king g2, and that means that the queen can finally step to e1 with a check, coordinating on c2 with the rook. And this whole dance, some of the moves in the dance, very delicate, very precise, some more brutish, but all winning the king. And so when the dance started, the queen were on g5, the king were on g1, and there was a pawn on f2, and this bishop was back here. And then the bishop came in and sacrificed itself, the king took, and they danced around and danced around, and with this check the king goes back, and the bishop moves back, so we have exactly the same position, except the queen is not on g5, the queen is on e4, and this pawn is gone, and the bishop is gone. All we played like 6-7 moves to make this subtle difference. You gotta love Tal. Gotta love these players. This threatens queen h1 check, which will eventually lead to checkmate, and we notice that rook takes rook is not possible, because then the rook will not be defending g2, and then the bishop coordinating the queen coming to g2 will be checkmate. So what can Spassky really do? Not much. He played h4, and then we saw queen check, only one move for the king. Then we have another check, only one move for the king. Another check. All these are pretty precise. You have to play it in the correct way still. And now we reach this position. And in this position, Spassky resigned the game. And don't worry, I will show you why. Because, you know, if this had been the position and you had told me that black had resigned, I guess I could buy that. No, this is not obvious unless you are like one of the best chess players in history, like Spassky. Okay, so let's understand why Spassky resigned. Let's understand why I claim that maybe Tal wasn't a magician but a scientist, and let's find out why we don't necessarily need to feel too bad for Spassky, even though he lost this game in this extremely important tournament with the KGB officers looking over his shoulder. So the first thing we will explore is, of course, why did Spassky give up? So he had to. Why did he have to? Well, he's in check. Can the king move? Well, the king can go here or here, and if it does, I will show you what happens. But why not queen coming to e3? Well, that is because it does block the check, and the queen is defended by the king, but the king is too exposed. And the bishop here can come and give a check on a4. Let's say it does that, check. And now you'll have to move the king. You cannot go here. That's the one square where you defend the queen, so you have to go to d2. But here the king is also exposed, rook coming to d7 with a check, and there's no way where you can keep in contact with the queen. You'll have to move away from the defense of the queen. Queen will take queen. You will have lost your queen for nothing, and checkmate is only a couple of moves away. So that is why he didn't try out queen coming to e3. Could he have moved the king instead? Let's take a look at that. Let's say just something like king to d2. Well, we give a check, and you could either lose your queen for nothing with a move like this, which is a green move because it prolongs the game for one more move, but queen coming here we just capture with the rook. And if you go here, we have checkmate in one with queen to d4. And that is why the magician or scientist won this beautiful, beautiful game. Now, why do I call him a scientist? So they say that Tal once said, there are 3 types of sacrifices: sound ones, unsound ones, and mine. And he is known for playing these spectacular but also speculative sacrifices that could have been refuted if the opponent had played perfectly. But I'd say to you, take this game. I have it linked in the description. Put it into your chess computer. The faster, the better. And analyze it. Because Tal played flawlessly. In modern terms, he played with an incredible precision of 97%. That is when Magnus plays his best. He plays at 97% today. And this was before they even knew about all this stuff that we have learned from computers. So that is why I say maybe he's not a mad scientist. Maybe he's not a magician. Maybe he's He's a mad scientist. And lastly, why shouldn't we feel so sad for Boris Spassky losing this game? Well, in the end of this very long tournament, despite playing some absolutely incredible chess, Tal did not win the tournament. Actually, Spassky won the tournament. And just 1 point ahead of future world champion Anatoly Karpov. So that is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this beautiful game. I certainly did. I hope that you are fast asleep or have gotten some nice relaxation. And I hope that I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.